Heartworm nails the PS1 era aesthetic, pulling you into moody, low-poly environments that feel like they've been ripped straight out of a late 90s nightmare. It's midnight, the lights are off, and you're armed with nothing but a camera against the unknown. It pulls you into a surreal nightmare that could easily pass as a forgotten PlayStation 1 horror gem. This indie title, developed largely by a single creator, Vincent Adinolfi, and published by Dread XP, wears its inspirations on its sleeve as a love letter to late 90s genre staples like Silent Hill and Resident Evil. But does Heartworm recapture that classic survival horror magic, or is it just riding on nostalgia? Let's step into the darkness and find out. The story centers on Sam, a young woman unable to move on after her grandfather's death. In her desperation, she scours an online forum for ways to contact the dead and discovers a lead about a mysterious house in the mountains. Of course, she decides to investigate. This secluded house supposedly holds a connection to the afterlife. It's a creepy premise that hooked me immediately. A personal journey through grief mixed with supernatural horror. Heartworm doesn't dump lore on you all at once. It keeps details sparse and lets you uncover memories piece by piece. Sam's exploration reveals vignettes from her life, gradually exposing what she's lost and why she's so driven. The narrative has an emotional core, dealing with grief and the memories we keep and wish we could forget, which gave the otherwise spooky adventure a surprisingly heartfelt touch. Don't expect every question to be answered clearly, though. Much like the old-school games it emulates, Heartworm leaves some story bits ambiguous and open to interpretation, especially towards its end. If you've played survival horror classics from the 90s, Heartworm will feel immediately familiar. You explore eerie locations, find keys and odd puzzle items, manage scarce resources, and face off against things that go bump in the night. The twist is your weapon of choice, Sam's vintage camera. Instead of a shotgun or pistol, you'll be peering through a camera lens to fight off ghosts and ghoulies. You line up a shot and click. The flash can stun or damage entities lurking in the dark. It's a clever nod to games like Fatal Frame and forces you to think carefully. Film is limited, so running away is often the smarter move. Combat is tense. You need to let enemies get in frame before you snap a photo. There's a mix of enemy types, from phantom hounds to glitchy VHS static apparitions, and even a few boss encounters that keep you on your toes. One standout boss encounter involves a mutated deer-like entity that phases in and out of reality, only visible through the camera's lens. A terrifying encounter that had my heart racing. Heartworm gives you a choice between classic tank controls or a more modern 3D control scheme with over-the-shoulder aiming. I tried both and was relieved that the modern controls feel smooth, so you're not forced to wrestle with old-fashioned movement unless you want that authenticity. The game mostly uses fixed camera angles to frame the action, those cinematic, sometimes claustrophobic shots where the view shifts as you move to a new screen. It works great for building tension and nostalgia, though it can be disorienting at times. The map system feels like a Silent Hill throwback, marking points of interest, but it won't show your exact position. You'll have to memorize layouts, but the game world is compact enough that it never became frustrating. Save points are classic too, chunky old PCs and safe rooms, which is a fun homage to the typewriter save rooms of Resident Evil. Inventory management is also part of the challenge. Sam can only carry so much, and you'll combine items or install camera mods to overcome obstacles. I loved finding mods for the camera. One upgrade let me fire off a burst of 3 shots at once, which really helped in a pinch. I only wish this mechanic was used even more, as it's introduced early on, but then quietly fades into the background later in the game. Heartworm absolutely nails its atmosphere. Visually, it could pass for a long-lost cousin of Silent Hill, with its lo-fi 3D graphics and eerie environments. The game even includes an optional retro-pixelation filter to mimic that chunky 32-bit look. For the record, I kept the filter on. It adds so much charm and actually improves the atmosphere. Without it, the graphics look duller and less distinctive. The variety in locales is also impressive for an indie project. You'll venture through a spooky suburban house and even find yourself in surreal, dreamlike spaces. The level design keeps things fresh, by frequently throwing you into new, uncanny settings that evoke classic horror set pieces while still feeling like part of Heartworm's own world. The audio design further builds the mood. The soundtrack is subtle and haunting, often consisting of melancholic piano melodies, droning ambient noise, and bursts of static that set an uneasy tone. The soundtrack leans more on unsettling ambience than outright scares. Some tracks drift into an almost calming melody, giving you brief moments to catch your breath when you might expect a sudden jolt. There's not a ton of voice acting, but Sam will mutter observations and the occasional one-liner as she examines her surroundings. The voice acting is a bit campy on purpose. Think cheesy B-movie charm, which Heartworm embraces fully. I went into Heartworm hoping for a nostalgia trip, and it delivered that and a few surprises. The game excels at transporting you back to an era of fixed cameras and survival horror fundamentals, yet it isn't content to only rely on nostalgia. It introduces a unique camera combat mechanic, weaves in a personal story of grief and loss, and packs in plenty of references for veteran horror fans. Not everything lands perfectly. The horror factor is more about creeping dread and spooky ambiance than big scares. Some players may find it tamer than expected. And while I loved the homages to classics, at times Heartworm lifts things a little too directly. Some rooms and musical cues felt almost copy-pasted from Silent Hill or Resident Evil, which briefly pulled me out of the experience. The ending, with its 3 possible outcomes, left me with more questions than answers, but that's par for the course in this genre. On the technical side, I encountered a couple of minor bugs, one death by wall collision, one weird animation glitch, but nothing that truly broke the game. For a 4 to 6 hour experience made on a shoestring budget, it's impressive how polished Heartworm feels overall. At the end of the day, Heartworm is a treat for retro horror fans that hit me right in the feels. It's not trying to reinvent survival horror, but it is trying to remind us why we fell in love with the genre decades ago. And on that front, it succeeds. If you have a soft spot for PS1 era horror, or you're just looking for a spooky indie game with heart, Sam's Journey is well worth your time. I'm giving Heartworm a solid 8 out of 10. If you enjoyed this review and want to see more, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to GameVault HQ for more game reviews and horror content. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.